The Foundation called me back in July 2019. I was on leave after an arduous mission, hoping for a reprieve. But when the SCP designation crossed my desk, I knew it was serious. SCP-4821, an anomaly dormant for decades, was stirring. The briefing room hummed with tension. Satellite data showed an enormous shift in the Mariana Trench. Seismic activity near the trench's Challenger Deep hinted at something alive, its size surpassing any known sea creature. "It's SCP-4821, said Dr. Reyna. "If it breaches, it could devastate the Pacific ecosystem." The Foundation's records on SCP-4821 were sparse, but terrifying. Survivors spoke of whispers and visions while on the water. Entire naval fleets had vanished in the 19th century. Our mission: descend to the trench, assess the anomaly, and contain it. We boarded the Orpheus, our submersible equipped for deep-sea containment. As the hatch sealed, I glanced at my reflection in the porthole, wondering if this mission would be my last. The descent was eerie. The ocean swallowed light and sound, leaving us suspended in a cocoon of darkness. The Orpheus creaked under the immense pressure, and the hull's temperature plummeted. "You feel that?" Hargrove muttered. "It's like something's pressing down on us." At 6,000 meters, the first anomaly appeared. Faint bioluminescent symbols etched into the canyon walls. Dr. Rena identified them as pre-Mesopotamian, symbols found nowhere else on Earth. "It's a warning," she said, her voice wavering. The symbols pulsed in rhythmic patterns, casting the sub in an unnatural glow. Sonar readings grew erratic, and strange noises echoed through the trench. "It's not just movement," the pilot whispered. "It's singing." We reached 9,000 meters when the first shadow emerged. It was massive, serpentine, coiling just beyond our lights. It moved with purpose, retreating into the darkness as though herding us deeper into the abyss. By 10,000 meters, the tension inside the Orpheus was unbearable. The shadow returned, this time closer. Its body seemed endless, undulating in the murky water. At one point, it passed directly over us, blotting out even the faintest glow from the bioluminescent walls. "Deploy the drones," Wallace commanded. 2 unmanned submersibles launched into the darkness, their lights slicing through the void. One drone picked up a massive structure ahead, an ancient temple resting on the trench floor. It was overgrown with coral and encrusted with deep-sea life. "Impossible," Rena whispered. "This architecture predates anything humanity could have built." Before we could investigate further, the shadow struck. It moved with unnatural speed, destroying one drone in an instant. The other barely managed to escape, transmitting fragmented footage of writhing tentacles and glowing hollow eyes. We reached the temple minutes later. Up close, it was a monolithic spiral descending into the seabed, carved with the same glowing symbols. The sonar revealed chambers within, but an ominous hum resonated from its core. "We're getting out," Wallace said, but Rena protested. "This is SCP-4821's domain. We can't leave without understanding it." The team donned pressurized suits and exited the Orpheus. The water felt alive, vibrating with unseen energy. As we moved closer to the temple, the symbols on its surface began to shift, forming new patterns. It was as though the structure itself was watching us. Inside, the temperature inexplicably rose. The walls pulsed faintly, and the carvings depicted a creature identical to the one stalking us. At the center of the main chamber was a massive orb, fractured and glowing faintly. The orb emitted whispers. At first they were indistinct, but they grew louder as we approached. Each voice spoke in a language foreign yet strangely familiar. I heard my name, my regrets, my fears whispered back at me. "Don't go near it," I warned, but Rena was already scanning the orb in. "It's a containment device," she said. "It's holding SCP-4821 in check, or was." As she spoke, the orb cracked further. A deep vibration rippled through the temple, and a screeching noise erupted, forcing us to cover our ears. The glow intensified, casting long, distorted shadows across the room. "We need to leave," Wallace barked, but the whispers were louder now, forming words. "Stay, witness, feed." The shadow creature began to manifest, its massive form rising behind us. The creature's tentacles slammed into the temple walls, shattering centuries-old carvings. "Back to the sub!" Wallace shouted. We sprinted through the twisting corridors, the shadow close behind. Its glowing eyes burned into my mind, dredging up memories I had buried long ago, and it was inside my head, whispering things only I could hear. Miss, it's feeding on us, Hargrove gasped. Our fear, our guilt, it's how it grows stronger. We barely made it to the Orpheus. The creature struck as we sealed the hatch, sending the sub spinning. Instruments shattered, alarms blared, and the hull groaned under the pressure. Fire the EMP, Wallace ordered. The sub released an electromagnetic pulse, temporarily disorienting the creature. It retreated into the darkness, but we knew it wasn't gone. The EMP gave us time to recover, but the damage was extensive. Communications were down, and the sub's power was failing. We have to surface, the pilot insisted, but Wallace shook his head. We haven't completed the mission. Dr. Rena argued that the orb could be repaired, possibly containing SCP-4821 once more. It's our only chance, she said. Reluctantly, we descended deeper into the trench. Following faint signals from the orb, the whispers returned, stronger than before. They seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, each symbol glowing brighter as we passed. Ahead, the trench opened into an enormous abyss. A chasm so vast, our lights couldn't find its edges. At its center was another structure, larger and more intact than the temple. The second structure dwarfed the first. It wasn't just a temple, it was a fortress, its alien design eerily symmetrical. Symbols etched across its surface pulsed with bright, complex patterns, glowing more intensely as we approached. Then the creature returned, larger and more furious. No longer shadow, it had become flesh. A grotesque mass of tentacles, each covered in glowing runes. It struck the Orpheus with a force that sent us spiraling. Alarms blared as we fought to stabilize the sub. We can't outrun it, I said. We need to lure it to the containment field. Wallace nodded, deploying decoy drones to distract it while we prepared the device. Inside the fortress, we discovered another orb, larger and intact but dormant. It hummed faintly with energy, waiting for activation. It felt like the key to stopping this nightmare, but we'd have to survive long enough to use it. The containment orb systems were ancient but functional. However, it required a manual power reroute to reactivate. Someone had to go outside the sub. The whispers had grown deafening by then, their words weaving through our minds like threads, pulling at our sanity. I volunteered. The dive suit felt like a coffin as I stepped into the icy abyss. My breath fogged the visor as I swam toward the orb. The creature loomed nearby, circling like a predator, toying with its prey. The orb's control panel was a series of alien symbols, glowing faintly. My hands trembled as I activated the sequences, feeling the creature's gaze boring into me. Its tentacles lashed out, grazing my suit and sending a wave of terror through my body. Back on the Orpheus, Rena shouted through the comms, "Hurry, the containment field is destabilizing." The creature was closing in, and I realized I might not make it back alive. The containment orb powered up, releasing a pulse of energy that momentarily drove the creature back, but it didn't retreat far. Instead, it let out a deafening roar that reverberated through the trench, shaking the very water around us. The fortress trembled, and fissures appeared in its structure. Rena's voice crackled through the comms. "It's reacting to the orb. It's not just a containment field. It's a beacon, calling SCP-4821 back to its lair." The creature lunged toward the fortress, ignoring me entirely. Seizing the moment, I swam back to the Orpheus as fast as I could, the water growing darker and heavier with each passing second. Every shadow felt alive, pressing closer. Inside the sub, chaos reigned. "The orb is destabilizing the trench," Wallace said, his tone grim. "If we don't seal it soon, the entire area could collapse." The team worked furiously, but the walls of the abyss groaned, threatening to bury us with the creature still inside. The creature struck the orb, its massive tentacles coiling around the glowing sphere. Energy arced between them, casting bursts of light that illuminated the trench. Each pulse revealed the sheer scale of SCP-4821. It was far larger and more terrifying than we'd ever imagined. "We have to overload the orbs," Rena said urgently. "It's the only way to contain it." Her words hung heavy in the air. Overloading the orb meant someone had to stay behind to trigger the sequence manually. Wallace stepped forward, his expression calm. "I'll do it," he said firmly. There was no time to argue. And deep down, we all knew he was the only one who could. He had always been the strongest among us. As Wallace left the sub, the whispers grew louder, almost mournful, echoing through the trench like a dirge. The creature's attention shifted to him, its tentacles twitching as it sensed the threat. "Hurry!" Reyna urged, her voice cracking. "We don't have much time." Wallace reached the orb and began the override sequence, his hands steady, despite the chaos around him. The fortress trembled violently as energy surged through its ancient structure, causing fissures to spread like veins across the walls. The creature roared, its tentacles flailing wildly, but Wallace held his ground. "Get out of here!" he yelled through the comms, his voice cutting through the static. "You have to surface before the field activates." Reyna, her face pale with fear, piloted the Orpheus away from the collapsing fortress. None of us could look away from the scene behind us. The orb's glow became blinding, its light consuming the trench. The whispers rose into a deafening chorus that seemed to echo from every direction. Then, with a final bone-chilling scream from SCP-4821, the containment field activated. The orb detonated in a massive burst of energy, shattering the fortress. The ruins caved in, burying both the creature and Wallace in the abyss. The Orpheus raced toward the surface, the trench collapsing around us. Rocks and debris crashed down, threatening to crush the sub. "Hold on!" Reyna yelled, pushing the engines to their limit as alarms blared. The whispers faded as we ascended, but their echo lingered in my mind. I couldn't stop thinking about Wallace and the sacrifice he had made to save us. His voice still seemed to echo through the comms, urging us onward. At 5,000 meters, the shadowy, serpent-like forms reappeared, but they didn't attack. They drifted aimlessly, their movements slow and purposeless, as if SCP-4821's containment had stripped them of their will. When we finally broke the surface, the first rays of sunrise greeted us. After the suffocating darkness of the trench, the light felt surreal, a reminder that we had survived, even if not all of us had made it back. Back at the Foundation base, we were immediately placed under quarantine. Psych evaluations were mandatory, and every detail of our mission was dissected and analyzed. The atmosphere was heavy, the weight of what we'd encountered pressing down on all of us. The containment field had held, but the trench was now deemed a permanent no-go zone. Foundation satellites monitored the area around the clock, with strike teams on standby in case of any unusual activity. Despite the precautions, I couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that SCP-4821 wasn't truly gone. The whispers had stopped, but the dreams hadn't. Every night, I saw Wallace standing alone in the ruins of the fortress, surrounded by the creature's glowing eyes. They didn't attack, they only watched, as if waiting. The image haunted me, a grim reminder of what we had lost, and what might still be lurking in the abyss, waiting for its next chance to rise. Months later, I received an encrypted message from Reyna. She had been analyzing the data from our mission and uncovered something terrifying. The containment field wasn't just holding SCP-4821, it was failing. "The creature isn't just one entity," Reyna wrote. "It's part of something bigger, something we don't understand." I stared at the screen, her words sinking in like ice. The trench wasn't a containment site, it was a gateway. SCP-4821 was just the beginning, a herald of something far worse waiting beyond the abyss. That night, the whispers returned, louder and more insistent than before. They spoke of darkness, of ancient things stirring in the depths. I knew then that it wasn't over. It might never be. For more chilling tales like this, don't forget to subscribe to Huskborn Horrors, where fear takes on a life of its own.